Here in just a couple minutes or in 1 minute or so, but what we're doing here is we are broadcasting live. So we got a studio audience here, but we're also going to have Mike from New Zealand doing a carving demonstration. So what I'll probably do is I'm going to pass it over to Mike here in just a minute. Now, if anybody has any questions on YouTube, ask your question and I should be able to relay it to Mike. We'll try to pay attention to the as much as we can to the YouTube questions. So feel free to ask. And I think we're pretty well good to go. All right, let me spotlight Mike here. And you got about 30 seconds before you should start, Mike. But there you are.
Hey, how you going, Ethan?
Very good.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine from here, yep.
All right, so hello everybody at Stockroom Supply in the store and everybody who's watching online. It is 7:30 in the morning here on a Friday in New Zealand, so it's pretty cool to be talking to you all to do some carving demonstrations. So the one thing I noticed, Ethan, before we kick off is when you were talking close, there must be maybe a speaker that's close by on your side.
Yes,
and
sir.
So it's only when you was talking close to the speaker you started to get a bit of feedback coming through, but that was only once or twice. And so when we're doing the demos, are you going to monitor the YouTube chat and maybe you can feed some of those questions through?
Exactly. Yeah, we'll try to keep an eye on that, and if we have questions, I'll relay them to you with this microphone.
All right, cool. And then I suppose the only other thing to watch out for is if you mute your mic in between, because otherwise we'll be hearing you too.
For sure. I'll mute it now, and then you can get started.
All right. So we're about ready, are we? I guess we are. So look, let's just test the cameras and let's see if this is going to work. So I've got a close up here, and I got a close up here, and then we got me. And then there's this screen that I can refer to as well. So, well, thanks everybody for joining us. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Mike Davis, and I trained as a wood carver way back when. In fact, what we'll do today is I think we've got about an hour, and there's a couple of things that we will do. The first thing is that we will just have a quick look at my work and background. Then we're going to get straight into some techniques. We're going to take a look at 6 simple carving techniques. We're going to introduce a new system to you. Well, it's not necessarily new, but it might be new to you, which is carving by numbers. It's a step-by-step system to teach you how to carve. And if you've got your own tools, you can use your own tools. Or if you don't, then we've got a selection that we can help you with. After we've looked at carving by numbers, the system, we're going to get into 6 very simple decorations that you could apply to either wood turning or furniture making, or you could make little gifts out of these 6 little decorations that I'm going to show you. I'm then going to go and show you the projects that's available, step-by-step projects that you can download for free from the Carving by Numbers website. We're going to look at one of the most important aspects of carving, which is sharpening. Now, I know Len a little earlier today was showing you how to do some how to do some sharpening, but we're going to really focus in on how to sharpen carving tools, which is an essential part of the carving process. And then after all of that, we're going to have a look at some ideas we call it food for thought, some ideas that will maybe get some creative juices flowing. So right at the beginning, let's just have a super quick introduction into my background. Let's see if I can make this technology work. So here I am at the age of 15, and there's a gentleman there that you might recognize. That's the Duke of Edinburgh. My training I was very fortunate. I got to train with a gentleman in the UK who was very well known, very well respected, and got to work on some amazing stuff. So we got to work for royalty at home and overseas. We got to do lots of restoration projects and so on. So when we're restoring antiques from the past, the carving has to be quite precise. We had to understand not only the style of the period in time from which the carving was from, so we had to carve in the style of the period, but also to make the repairs indistinguishable to see, we would have to carve also in the style of the carver. So I think for the first 2 years, none of my work actually was ever used. It was just training until finally my Ron Hester, who was a dear friend, it would finally be of a standard where he would let it out the door. So this was a presentation that I had to do to the Duke of Edinburgh. And so what else have we got? Then I trained as once I was qualified, I used to make furniture making, and I also gained a teaching qualification and used to travel around the UK teaching as a freelance teacher, teaching traditional hand skills. And as part of that, I also started a course in a magazine, and it was called Carving by Numbers. It was a course designed really to teach people how to carve in a very simple way. And I think it was so simple that it actually caught on. And I'm proud to say that it's been used for about 30 years now in various schools and colleges and magazines. It also got published into a book. So here we can see there's the book, and I'll show you later how you can get that free of charge, the book and all the contents within it. And throughout my training and woodworking background, I'd always had this relationship with Record Power, because many of the tools that I used during my training were made in the foundries in Sheffield by Record Power, and I'm very fortunate now to work directly for them. They not only support my carving education, but I work supporting all of our partners in international locations. And of course, Ethan and the team at Stockroom Supply is one of our very important partners for Canada. And this was us all at the the Hamilton Wood Show at the back end of last year. So that's a little bit about my background and connection to Record Power. And now let's get into doing some carving techniques. So when you're learning how to carve, there are two important areas of learning. Now, the first area of learning is the technical aspects. This is how you sharpen the tools and how you hold them correctly, how you control the tools. That's the technical aspect. This is the first and most important area of carving that we're going to cover. The second aspect is the subject. And this is where a lot of people get a little bit caught up. First of all, you must understand how to carve. And it doesn't matter what subject you're carving, you're going to need to master these skills first. The subject then comes later. So first you master physically how to carve, and then you start focusing on the subject. So whether that's architectural carving or cultural carving or sculpture, let's say you really want to focus on carving a fish, well, you'd have to know a lot about the fish to be able to carve it, if you know what I mean. So the subject comes later. What we're going to focus on now, we call the foundation skills. It's the the technical aspects of carving. So let's get into, first of all, 6 simple techniques on how to control your carving tools. And for that, I'm going to select one of our carving tools. This is one of the Carving by Numbers tools, number 4. So the first thing that we want to think about is how to hold the tool. And what we're going to say is we're going to call this a pinch position, where we're pinching the blade of the tool between your finger and your thumb. Let's see if we can see that. Can you see that between my finger and my thumb? And it really doesn't matter if you're left or right-handed. You're just gonna, it's the same principle, hold it in whichever hand you feel most comfortable. And the idea of that is it's for when you're setting in a cut, a vertical cut, or we're gonna do delicate work cutting towards it. So this is the pinch position. And next position, that's technique number one. The second one, we're going to call it the fist position. So you're going to hold the tool so that the sharp end, the pointy end, is next to your little finger. And it wants to be maybe, I don't know, about an inch away from your little finger. Can you see that? So this is simply a method of holding the tool to give you a little bit of extra grip. And we'll explain, I'll explain where that will come into play as we progress. Don't forget, we're going to do 6 simple decorations. So we'll put these techniques to practice. So we've got the pinch position, fist position. Now the next very important technique is it doesn't matter if you're pinch position or fist position, the hand that is holding the tool, left or right-handed, doesn't matter, but the hand that is holding the tool must always be in contact with the work. See how that is in contact with the work here? So if it's the pinch position or the fist position, it's in contact with the work. Or it could be the arm of the hand. Let's say you're working on something quite large, but there must be contact because that actually forms the brake. It's like a braking mechanism for the hand that's holding the tool. You can't slip. All right, so we got pinch position, fist position, anchoring. So the next technique we're going to think about if you're cutting a loaf of bread. So now let's say you go to a bakery and you get a really fresh loaf of bread and you just put a downward pressure on that loaf with a really sharp knife. The question here, Ethan, and everybody else watching, is what would happen if you push down on that loaf of bread with a razor sharp knife? The answer to that is that it would just crush. But as soon as you start sliding the knife, then the cut becomes more effective. And that applies completely the same to a carving tool. So when we're carving, and I'm going to carve across the end here. Actually, I'm just going to turn this upside down. Let me get the rough side first. When we're carving, I'm going to hold it in the fist position in this case, but can you see across the edge how I will slide? Can you see I'm using the entire length of the cutting edge? Let me get a slightly longer tool so you can see that. Can you see here? Sliding. Now, Ethan, I'm not sure, are you actually able to see what I'm doing there? There we go, sliding.
We can see really well, Mike.
Excellent. All right. Well, that's nice. So we've got pinch position, fist position, anchoring, and that anchoring then allowed me to slide, use the whole length of that tool to make a nice cut. And because it's anchored and I'm in the fist position, everything is nicely under control. So now let's say we want to move a lot of timber and we want to move a lot of timber quickly. Well, we might not be able to slice it away. Let's say we've got some oak or some really heavy timber. Well, we would probably need to use a mallet, and there's lots of different types of mallets. So this is a bronze, or I think this one's a brass mallet. It's really quite heavy. We would hold the head of the mallet like that, or you can have a lighter weight timber one where you would hold the handle. So let's say we want to remove a bit more timber quickly. Well, we're going to call this the tapping technique. Now what that means is that we're going to be in a fist position. It's going to be anchored to the workpiece, and I'm going to tap the handle of the tool with the mallet. But importantly, watch what happens to the cutting edge. Can you see how with each tap, and maybe that camera might be a bit better, here, there. Can you see that with each tap, the blade is motivated forward, but the anchor is making it return back to its original position? And I can hit that as hard as I want, but this anchor is in control. So the only thing I need to do to start cutting is increase the angle, which I can do by pivoting with the wrist. So you see, by increasing the angle, so I'm going to start, I'm not cutting anything, but now I'm going to increase the angle, and can you see how I'm starting to take a very controlled cut. So I'm not having to put too much pressure behind the, I mean, we can move quite a lot of timber, but I'm not having to use any body weight or force. I'm just, it's a controlled cut. There we go. And again, not too much. In fact, it's really not a good idea to put body weight behind a cut, because if you're putting body weight behind the cut, then you could slip. You're putting too much pressure on this anchor. So everything needs to be nice and effortless, and that's partly down to sharp tools, but also the technique. So what do we got? Pinch position, fist position, it's always anchored. Sliding to do fine polished cuts. Tapping technique, so I think that's 5, isn't it? Pinch, fist, anchored, sliding, tapping, yeah. So we've got one more to go. And this is why it doesn't matter if you're left or right-handed, because the general rule is, if you're going to carve to the left-hand side of the bench, we're going to hold the tool in your left hand. And if you're going to carve to the right-hand side of the bench, we're going to hold the tool in your right hand. So I'll demonstrate that. So we're cutting in that direction, holding it in the left hand, cutting it in this direction, holding it in the right hand. And the reason for that is, you understand that timber has a grain structure. I'll just grab something. So this is a little block of drinking straws here. So if you imagine this is timber, and I should have got some elastic bands on this. Let me just grab some elastic bands. So if you imagine that is a block of timber, and we'll put some elastic bands around so it doesn't fall apart. Right. If I take the end off there. Now, if I want to cut a pencil, if I want to cut in this direction here, I would have to carve, so imagine this is our timber. If I want to carve and round over this edge, I would need to carve in that direction, supporting, so I'm cutting the shorter fibres to the long, so that the longer fibres support the cut. If I come this way, do you see how they would break out? Same if I wanted to round this cut over here, I would have to carve in this direction so that these longer fibres are supporting this cut. If I cut in that direction, they would break out. Same for this end. Same for the opposite end. If I want to cut in that direction or this direction, I'm going to have to cut in rounding there, rounding here, opposite hand, carving in that direction, opposite hand, carving there, and I'll show you from this angle. So right hand, carving to the right, rounding in that direction. I might change hands here to carve there, that direction and that direction. So whatever direction we're carving, we've got to be able to change hands. Otherwise, we're going to be moving around the work, moving your body to do the carving. So the idea is you stay centrally located in front of your work and you carve by changing the hands. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. So our sixth technique, in actual fact, is simply to become ambidextrous, to use both hands to cut in all directions. Okay, so I think that covers that. Let's have a look. All right, so now let's talk. So that's your carving techniques. Is there any questions, Ethan? Do we have any questions on the 6 techniques? I can see him getting up.
No questions at this moment.
No questions at the moment. All right. Okay, so now let's just talk very quickly about the whole carving by numbers system. So I mentioned earlier that writing for those magazines, the idea, if you're teaching people how to carve, there is such an infinite amount of projects that you can do, an infinite amount of subjects that you can do. And of course, there is a vast selection of carving tools. And it's very daunting for a beginner to know exactly where to start, because what tools do you need to do whatever project, whatever subject you're interested in? So years and years ago, I was asked to write a course on teaching people how to carve, and we thought, look, there is something called the Pareto's principle, or the 80-20 rule. It means that 80% of your work is generally done with 20% of your toolkit, if that sort of makes sense. So there is a vast few. I've got cupboards full of hundreds of carving tools, all different shapes and sizes and profiles, but I pick up the same tools time and time again. There's that small few that I use for most jobs. And so years ago, we broke that down. We selected 5 of the most commonly used tools, and then created a selection of projects where we would take the student step by step through a series of projects using this limited selection of tools. I think it ended up being the longest running series. It used to be Traditional Woodworking magazine that run the series. It was the longest running series in the magazine's history, I think, which was pretty cool back then anyway. And all of those projects got compiled into this book. And the book we used to manufacture this tool range years ago. The tools used to sell really well, and the education was very well received. So
I have a quick question, actually, Mike.
Yep.
Could you repeat what the name of that 80-20 principle was?
A Pareto's principle.
Okay.
No, if someone Googles that, I've been using this word for a very long time, and I hope it's correct. Pareto's principle. If someone Googles that, I'm sure they'll tell me if it's wrong. But it's the 80-20 rule. You've heard of the 80-20 rule, right? So anyway, so now what's happened is it's evolved over 30 years, goodness me, 30 years, and with the Association of Record Power, I'm very proud to say that Record have produced this set of tools. Now this is not, don't feel that this is a big sales pitch, it's not, because if you've got your own tools, there's going to be some projects that I can show you later on, and you can match your profiles to the scale references. So if you've got your own tools, then you can match your profiles and you can follow the course, and the course is available for you free of charge. So, but if you don't, then this set of 5 tools matches all the education in the book, and the book is now free online. So we've got the Essential Collection. We then have the pattern carving set. Now again, the pattern carving set is just a set of 3. But you can do some really cool designs with that, and we're going to demonstrate some of those soon. Ethan, you've got all of these in stock, I think, and just to give you an indication of cost, in Canada, that pattern carving set's about $70, I think. And that set of 5 was about $109, so they're very reasonably priced. Pattern carving set, spoon carving set, and we've got all sorts of spoon designs that we can do. Most importantly, if you go to YouTube, there's all sorts of videos. It's a very new channel, and we're just building the channel with all of these tutorial videos. But essentially, with that set of tools, then that's what you're able to create, to follow the education. And finally, we have the comprehensive collection. Now that is basically the 5-piece and the pattern carving set and the spoon carving set all together. And it comes with a tool roll, which is the set that I'm using here. So it's actually a combination of those 3 other sets and an extra tool and a tool roll. So in that way, you get your 12-piece, and I think, Ethan, I think that's about $230, I think, Canadian. If you're watching in the US, about $185 in the US, and in the UK, £139. All right, so that's basically the carving by numbers system. That's the tool range. If you go to carvingbynumbers.com, you will find, you're going to find the book, which is all of the education in the book is available for you free. There's videos, downloadable plans and projects. And I think there's now over 3,000 design ideas for you to get started with. So carvingbynumbers.com. If you've got your own tools, you can follow it, and there we go. So our next bit, we're going to get now into practice cuts, and so practice. We're going to do 6 simple decorations. So with the foundation skills, those significant 6 techniques, we're going to do 6 simple decorations now that you could apply to wood turning. You could apply to furniture, gifts, and so on. Right, so the first cut is going to show you how we could do designs similar to this. Oh, no, wrong camera. There we go. So can you see these little designs here? I'm going to show you the cut, which will allow you to do these sorts of designs. So at this point, I'm going to choose my carving by numbers number 11. It's quite a broad blade. So remember, pinch position, it's anchored. Now I'll turn this block of timber over. We'll do some designs. So let's just say, I mean, you can go to, like I said, if you go to the Carving by Numbers website, over 3,000 design ideas that you can find. And so let's say you go and you find a pattern like this that you like. So you can print it off on your printer. Once you've printed it off on your printer, now this is another design that I'll show you later, but essentially print it off on your printer, use some carbon paper, and then you can transfer that design onto your timber so that it's just generally marked out. And the cut that you're going to need to do that, so let's say here we've got let's just do a curve like that. So where's my number 6? Here we go. So to follow that cut, I'm pinch position, it's anchored, a downward force to create. I'm just doing a vertical cut. I don't know whether you can see that. And now pinch position, I'm just going to simply cut towards it. So basically you would find the tool that is appropriate to follow your line and cut down towards it. So here we have our vertical cuts, and then we're cutting down towards it. So there would be your tool to follow the pattern design, and then we're just simply cutting down towards it. So is that pretty clear? Now, if the design, if it doesn't necessarily follow the tool's profile, you can still use, so I didn't actually follow that line there, I just followed the contour of the tool's profile. But let's say, I'm putting that line back in there now. Let's say I want to follow that line. I can use the edge of the tool Can you see how I can use the edge of that tool, the tip, it doesn't have to follow perfectly the profile of the tool. So can you see now how I've changed the profile of the tool by using the tip like a cutting edge? And now I'm just cutting down towards it. Can you see that? So that is a very simple technique, and you're just going to follow the outline of a pattern and bring it into relief, and that's it. How easy is that? There's an alternative, so what you could do is actually remove totally the background. So let's say on our design here, we've actually removed all of the background, carving in different directions, and it's a bit rough in the bottom. Well, we can make little punches. Can you actually see? Can you see that that's punched? Maybe you'll see it better on that one. Oops. Can you see in the background? It's got like a little punched, there you go. Can you see that little punched effect in the background? Well, even if it's a bit rough, where you've removed the timber and you can't get it super clean, you can make a series of little punches. Now this is fantastic. When I was an apprentice, I was given a set of carving tools. And that set of carving tools, some of them, it's gone through like 3 generations of carvers. When you get your carving tools as an apprentice, it's almost like, well, it is, it's like Christmas. So you're gifted, when a carver passes away, then his set of tools is gifted to the new apprentice wherever he is in the country. This was in England. And And the big thing that you would get with your tool is a punch, and you punch your name, you stamp your name into the handle. And that's your set of tools for life. So I'm going to just go into my cupboard here. I'm going to see if I can find a good example for you. I should have had one ready really, but let's see. Yeah, here's a good example. Here, can you see that there's a name stamp on there on this particular tool? This is quite a nice old tool, T. Randall's. Well, that was the previous owner. When you get your new range of tools, when you get your new set of tools as an apprentice, you get, there was hundreds, but I got a stamp, my own stamp, and you put your name into the tool. And with that came this little box. This is a very old Royal Winola. I think it's an old soap box. But inside here was a collection of very tiny little punches. shaped punches. And these are used, they're just nails that have been filed down. And some of them have been filed with a, if you look at this one, for example, it's been filed with a V file, creating tiny little pyramid effects across the top of the punch. And when used with a mallet or a hammer, that is used to stamp the background of the carving work. And what that does is it serves two purposes. The first is it gets rid of all the uneven chips that you can't get rid of, or very easily get rid of. But secondly, the thing that it does is when its stain goes into it, the stain absorbs into all those little indentations and it becomes a deeper colour. So your carving, as a result, it's really brought out. So all of the low lights in all these little stamped areas would be quite dark with the stain, and then you get this lovely, it really highlights that carved area. And of course what you can do is you can get all sorts of different shapes and sizes of those punches. I don't know whether you can you see that reasonably easily? Maybe in that camera. See, they're all different shapes and sizes to get into the little nooks and crannies of your carved work. So that, all that was a setting cut and cut towards it, and you've got all those different design options, and there's thousands of them on the website that you can download and print. Okay. So that's one technique. We're just setting in a cut, cutting towards it, nice and easy. I'll just get rid of these. Now the next cut, let's do this. I'm gonna get a, here we'll use this. I'm gonna create a little line for us to work towards. Can you see that little shape there? What we're going to do is, the next cut is cutting in a V. So the first one was a vertical cut and a 45 towards it. And now what we're going to do is a V cut. And a V cut can be used for all sorts of different design work, but particularly lettering. Oops. Lettering. So lettering is simply formed by V-cuts into the timber. The wider the line, the deeper you go. The shallower the line, the shallower you go. So can you see how that would work? And similarly, for pattern carving, and we've just done a video on this on YouTube. So again, we created this little design, put it onto the work with carbon paper, and this is a series of V-cuts, and I'll show you how to do that now. And we'll do that on this little area there. So again, I might not have a tool profile that's going to fit that perfectly, but by using the tip of the carving tool in a controlled way, so I can follow that line. So can you see, if I use the tip, I won't go straight to the line to start off with. Pinch position, it's anchored. And I'm using the edge of that tool to cut a little V. I haven't gone directly to that line, but I've just made a start. Using the opposite side of the tool, holding it in the opposite hand, using that edge. Can you see how now I'm going to cut towards that to create a V using the edge of the tool? Can you see? And now I've started, I can go closer to my line. And coming down from the other side to create a V. And it's actually quite quick. It's really pleasurable to do. So can you see as I'm getting towards the finer part, I'm not going as deep. And the goal is that we have a nice clean channel in the bottom. And where we come to a square end, can you see how I'm almost making a little pyramid shape? And so we've got a little tool that we can use for that. That's either a little flat tool or a skew. How we going, Ethan? It's very quiet on my side.
It's going really well. Now, we did have one question from YouTube.
Yeah.
Do you have any books specifically related to lettering and carving that you would recommend?
Yes. Well, actually, if you go to carvingbynumbers.com and then you go to plans and projects section, click on the 5000 series. I'll show you a bit later, but there is a dedicated tutorial with instructions on both in-size lettering and relief lettering that's free, and you can just download it. And it's a tutorial on lettering both in size, like I'm doing now, or relief, where you bring the letter in relief and reduce the background. So and different fonts. So of course, letter carving used to be that was a sign writer. That was a craft in itself, where every letter had to be hand created and equally proportioned and spaced. It was an art form in itself. But now a computer does it for us, because it gives you an array of fonts. You can print them off in whatever size you want, in whatever style, lay it onto your piece of work, or transfer that, possibly with carbon paper, and carve straight through. So does that help? Does that help answer that? Good, maybe, hopefully. All right, so I'm going to finish. So can you see how now we've incised a cut? It's a little V. Now, whether that is lettering or pattern carving, those are the techniques to do that. And as mentioned, so that's exactly the same set of the only technique that we've used to create this sort of design. And what a lovely little panel, or for a name on a door or a house sign. Those are the sorts of sets those are the sorts of projects that you can do with that technique. And again, we have a pattern carving set, a set of 3 tools, which are the right profiles for most jobs. So with those 3 tools, I only use 3 tools for that. And that's your pattern carving set, which is available in the Carving by Numbers range. All right, so that is our that is our V. So we've got a vertical cut set in, we've got a V, and now let's do, if you wanted to do some work similar to these projects. So these projects really have been set in, cut towards it, but now they've started to have shape, where we're starting to add contour. So this here is simply an advancement on this. So if we take a look at this, where those bands are passing beneath each other, it's getting a 3-dimension. It's just an advancement on this. If, for example, we wanted this band to pass beneath there, see, I put a line in and I would make that band go lower. So now we're going to add 3-dimension. To do that, we're going to do a little exercise to create flutes, and that will help you to control the tool and create shape, where you can go a step further to these very basic cuts. Now, flutes. If you really want to practice some formal, precise cuts, then these are great practice pieces. This is a practice board where this is about getting your techniques accurate and your hand skills accurate, because it has to be very precise. And we'll do a couple of flutes so I can show you how to do that. How are we going for time? Projects. Yeah, I think we're going all right. So let's do some flutes. Now then, flutes, we're going to mark with, this is the width of a flute. In fact, I'll show you how we get that. So I would select a tool. We're going to use tool number, this is the carving by numbers tool number 3. And we will just get the width of the tool. So we go a little bit further than the width of the tool. That makes sense. So we set our dividers a bit further than the width of the tool. I set another pair of dividers which is half of that width and create a series of marks using the tool two dividers. Is that making sense, Ethan? Are you with me? Are you following what I'm doing? So now I'm going to create a series of lines with my straight edge. So can you see that? You can see those vertical lines. I will get we're going to put a horizontal line at the bottom and a line at the top of the flute. So hopefully you can see that. What I might do is let's see if we can bring camera number 1 in a bit closer. Right. Now the only problem is, as we get closer in, the camera starts to want to hunt. It starts going in and out of focus. But so we've got tool number 3. So at this point here, we do the base of the flute. So we're going to create this part here. Is that going to work for us? Yeah. So I'm setting in a cut vertically, creating that nice little arc. Can we see that? And now, pinch position. The goal is that I'm carving between those lines in a very controlled way. Focusing to keep the cut within that line. So I'm using a shaped gouge to cut a straight line, using the top edge to keep that, to follow along that straight line. It's a fantastic exercise in tool control. And having a nice shape at the top. So if you can start to practice to get lovely straight lines. Can you see that? Ooh, blurs. Can you see that? If you can practice to do that, I'm cutting across the grain. Then you can start to add shape and 3-dimension to your other projects. And like I say, we're going to have a look at those projects and what they look like very soon. So let's see if you can see that. You got that? Okay. Now, are there any wood turners out there, Ethan? Are there any wood turners in the audience, do you think?
There are a couple, yep.
Okay, so what we're going to do, those are sort of some formal cuts that is going to ask you to be quite precise and controlled with your cutting directions, but it doesn't have to be precise. So here's quite a random little design. This is around the edge of a bowl. We're going to show you how to do this decoration, how to do this decoration, and another cut which will look like planished copper. Very quick. And that could be used, those decorations could be used around the edge of a table or around the edge of a plaque, a house sign, around the edge of a bowl. It's very versatile in terms of being able to just add a point of difference to your work. So first of all, let's do our random little channels. So that's different to, these are different to our flutes that we've done, which is very precise to a line and equally spaced. This would just be a series of channels or flutes. The important thing here is the high spot, that we don't change the high spot. If I show you there, if you go too deep or you start removing that channel, you'll change the top profile, which we don't want to do. We still want to keep the high spots at the same height of the original timber. But to create that little decoration, I'll do it here. This is simply a series of cuts. Now I might go to the fist position there. So I want to keep the height. I don't want to change the height of that. I want to just bring it to a high point where the two cuts are meeting each other. And then we can just do a series of those cuts around the edge. It's so quick. So when you put that with a stain, and we're going to have a look at some examples later, it's very quick, but at the same time, it might just add a little point of difference around the edge of a bowl that you have. Similarly, we have something called a V-tool. Now this V-tool is a little bit different to your standard V-tool. Where are we? So this V-tool is a combination of a V-tool, but it's also slightly rounded on the base. Whether you can see that. And so what that means is that it doesn't give a precise V. It's got a veiner at the bottom, so it's almost like a multi-purpose tool. But what we can do here is we will replicate this little design. Remember, I'm going across the grain. I haven't drawn this out or anything. This is just random little cuts. And you can see very quickly how you could get quite an interesting design around the edge of a border. There we go. And finally, as our sixth simple technique, we'll just do some simple cuts. Have you ever seen copper when it's been struck, planished it's called, these tiny little indentations? Well, we can do the same sort of effect with a carving tool by just taking tiny little cuts. I don't know whether you can see that. Tiny little cuts around, which can feature around the edge, again, the edge of a bowl or a border. And when polished, it gives a really interesting little undulating effect. But you can see how that is progressing and how very quickly that can be done. Okay, so that's our six. That is our six techniques, or sorry, six little decorations. And that's what that little planished effect would look like. And our, I don't know what you'd call that, zebra strikes. This is around the edge of a bowl, and those random little scoops that we've just done there. So now we're going to talk about the projects of what all of these, there's a series of downloadable projects. Like I say, there's 3,000 design ideas, but there is a series of step-by-step projects that you can follow, which will guide you through projects graded in difficulty. And again, it's all completely free. And what I'll do, I'll see if I can bring up the internet. Let's see if I can do this. Yep. Right. So this is the Carving by Numbers website. If you go to Plans and Projects, click Plans and Projects. Now, there are 3 different sets of tools out there. If you've got the original signature set, all of the plans are in there for you. If you've got one of the early Record Power Carving by Numbers sets, you'll find all of the plans in there. But this is for the new 5000 series, so we'll click on that. Now let's say we've got a significant 6 techniques, sharpening and maintenance tutorial, flat carving. So let's download that one, have a look what that looks like. It tells you the tools, references that you're going to need, and then it gives you the plan, and it walks you step by step through each of those designs, and it gives you different design variations that you can choose as well. So that's an example of what they look like, and let's see if we can go back. So now we'll run through the different projects. So we've got flat carving, gouache, which is flat carving where you've got a bit of, you're starting to shape the design with some different design ideas. Celtic designs, there's heaps of Celtic designs that you can do. And again, if you go on the internet, it's full of them. Here's a nice little example here of one which I took off. This is a design idea that I took off the internet. Celtic designs. We've got a Tudor rose. Oh, the Tudor rose, a classic. So that's the Tudor rose project right there. And again, step-by-step support for you along the way. We mentioned, Ethan, about lettering. Well, there's a lettering tutorial that's available for you. And again, if you get the pattern carving set, that set of 3 tools, then that will help you do that. Carved decorations for wood turners. These are the 3 simple decorations for wood turners. Barley twist, there's a tutorial on barley twist. Patra, which are these beautiful little flowers, which could be gifts or you can apply to furniture. Flowers and leaves, acanthus panels. So now we're starting to get into the classical ornament. Corbels, you could put that as a bracket or on a fireplace. Swag, and there we go. So all of those projects, downloadable, free of charge. If you've got your own tools, you can match the profiles, or if not, you can get the carving by numbers tools that will help you. So now, finally, we're going to get into sharpening. How are we going for time? We're getting close. Ethan, are we still okay? I might overrun a tiny bit, but I'll make this bit quick.
Yeah, technically I had you scheduled to 3:30, but if you go fast, I'm sure it's no problem.
Okay, so 3:30, what time is it now? 3:28. I think it's 3:28. All right, I've got 2 minutes to cover sharpening. So, 9 times out of 10, sharpening can be done on this little thing here. It's essential that you get razor sharp tools, but if you have a slight defect in your tool, these are hard felt wheels that you can get from various woodworking stores. If you put it on a machine, you've got to ensure that that is traveling away from you. You do not want that wheel coming towards you where you're going to put a sharp tool in. It must travel away from you. But with some polishing compound, then that will give you an absolute razor sharp tool in seconds. And so 90% of your maintenance is done using a buffing wheel similar to that. If you don't have a buffing wheel like that, then you can use a leather strop and some polishing compound, and you would just draw the tool down the leather strop. It's the same but slower. Same result. If you had damage to your tool, then you can get numerous different bench stones. I think Len earlier was showing the diamond cutting tools by Trend. Diamond bench tools. This is an old silicon carbide tool. You can see how that's been worn. But you get ceramic stones, there's all sorts of different stones you can get. But the technique would be the same, and that is we're feeling the angle of the bevel of the tool and then slowly rotate so this is if you've got a damage to the tool, if the tool is damaged and the buffing, the polishing can't take it out, you've got to go a bit of a step further, then you would use a bench stone using that technique. That's going to create a little burr in the inside of the tool, which would be removed by a shaped tool. This is a slipstone. And let's see if I can... So you see how the stone is on the inside of the canal. To remove that burr, so I can feel the burr is gone. And then from that point on, we would then go to the strop. We would go to the strop or the buffing wheel. And that's sharpening. You'll get razor sharp tools. There is a tutorial on YouTube that you can follow, which will hopefully explain that. So it's 8:32 this side, so that's 3:32 on your end, Ethan. I'm 2 minutes over, but I think that's pretty much it. In a nutshell, to wrap it up, go to carvingbynumbers.com. If you've got your own tools, there's a whole resource of education that you can use to learn carving. If you don't have your tools, talk to Ethan or any of the Record Power stockists around the world who will have the Carving by Numbers range for you to purchase. That's it. Thank you very much.
That was excellent, Mike. Thank you so much. Now, we did have a question on the buffer. So the wheel on our right is that hard felt wheel. Can you talk a little bit about the left-hand side? Looks like it's a contour on top.
This one. Yeah. Yep. So stand by. Oh, here we go. So basically, you can. This is a nice wide one on this wheel. You buy them in different shapes and sizes. That's a flat one, and then this one is a shaped one. So the purpose of the shaped one is similar to where I was using that oil stone to remove the burr from the inside of the tool. The shaped one is basically removing, if you on the buffing wheel create a slight little burr on the inside, the shaped one is to remove the burr from the inside. And usually it is a dome and a V. So let's see, can you see that? So this is actually a dome here, and then that's a V, to remove the burr from the insides of the tools. Does that help, Ethan?
Yeah, I think that was a great explanation. Now, another question regarding sharpening.
Yes.
Do you have any experience with a Tormek in carving tools? Or a Tormek style sharpener?
Yeah, Tormek is a whetstone sharpening system. Similar, Record Power produce one. It's a whetstone sharpening system. There is a bit of an explanation about the steel in a carving tool goes through a heat treating process called tempering. And that involves heating the steel to cherry red, quenching it in water, and it makes it's hard but brittle. And then that steel is heated again until you get a straw colour coming through, and it's quenched in oil. And that makes it hard and durable. So first they harden it, and then it's heated again to get this straw brown colour through the steel dipped in oil. And that means that when you put that very fine tip, if you push down on it, it's not going to break. If it's too brittle, it would break. So tempering of the carving tool is very important. The danger of using a high-speed grinder is that if this high-speed grinder, let's say you've damaged your tool so much that you can't buff it out and you can't get it out with an oil stone and you need to grind the bevel again. If you put that on a high-speed grinder, what can happen is it heats up very quickly, the tip goes black, and you've taken away the tempering, that tempered edge from the cutting edge. So it becomes weak and brittle. You really don't want to overheat it. So if you're using a high-speed grinder, constantly dip the tool in water. The beauty of a whetstone sharpening system like Tormek or like the Record Power whetstone sharpening system is it's constantly carrying water to the grinding wheel as you're sharpening, so you can't remove the temper from the steel. And the other beauty is they come with a whole array of jigs, so it means that you get a lovely consistent bevel angle. Can you see that lovely straight bevel angle? So it's a very precise method of grinding your tools without losing the temper and enabling you to get a very precise cutting edge angle. Does that help?
Well, I think that was really good. And then on the other side of the whetstone, you usually have a leather wheel.
Yes. Yeah. So in this case, yeah, you've got so to grind, you're grinding to get that very precise ground edge angle, and then similar to this buffing wheel, using the jigs, you can then get a very, very precise polished edge, a razor sharp edge directly from the one machine. So, I mean, if we think back to where I was explaining about when I was gifted all of these beautiful tools, all of these beautiful tools, some of them have 3 or 4 name stamps on them. They're generations, they've passed through generations. Now, we don't want to grind this steel away unless absolutely necessary. So the grinding side of things is kind of a last resort when you've damaged the blade and you can't get it out using a stone. But the beauty of it is if you are grinding the metal away, you're grinding very precise amounts of steel, and you're taking and you're not going to overheat it and remove the temper. So with a machine like that, it's safe grinding, very precise, and then you've got this polishing wheel, which acts as a slower form of this buffing wheel to to give you that lovely polished razor edge. So it's all your sharpening systems all rolled into one, is how I would explain that.
Well, that's great. So, yeah, I don't think there's any other questions, but I just want to thank you for taking the time this morning, or your morning. I know you woke up real bright and early to do this, so super appreciate that. And I hope we can do it again in the future.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think it's fantastic. It's Good Friday here now, so it's my day off. I'm off sailing.
Oh, that's good. Well, sorry to
Good
bother you
fun.
on your holiday, but I'm glad you
Oh,
came.
absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed it, Ethan, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, very good. Well, I'll probably end the live here now. But yeah, this is excellent. Okay, so let me do that then. Okay, I think the live is ended, Mike. So
All right.
you are free to say whatever you want.
Yeah, no, that was all
All right,
right.
that one's still going technically. But if anybody has any questions directly for Mike, now is a good time to ask if anybody does. Otherwise, we can set you free whenever you need to go, Mike.
That box set is similar to the roll.
Yeah, I'll let you. You can talk to them directly here. Just a question here, Mike.
The
Yeah.
older box set that Ethan was selling, that's still similar to the roll, the new setup.
The older style.
Yeah, so that original box set, you will find on at carvingbynumbers.com. So you would still find the set of projects that is relevant for those profiles. So you can still absolutely follow the course. In fact, the steel in those tools is fantastic. They really held their edge very, very well. What we managed to, it was that original set was, it was when I first joined Record, because they'd already got a set of tools, and I'd written that education years ago, and we married the two together. But it sold so well. At one point, that was so we got some pretty good feedback. It was the best-selling carving set in North America for a while, which was fantastic. And so that told us that we were really doing, the concept was right, and it enabled us then to go back to the drawing board, redesign the tools. So these tools have been designed by us. Beech handle, brass ferrule, the steel in the tools are beautiful. So we were able to create this second generation, if you like, but the original set is absolutely still current, and you can still get the projects that will match it. It's just when you go to the projects on the website, look for that set of tools, and then you've got 16 projects, downloadable projects in there for that set of tools. Hope that helps.
All right, I think that's good then, Mike. Again, appreciate you coming, and I'm sure we'll talk soon. So,
yeah, well, again, thanks for having me. So shall I sign out now?
yeah, you're probably good to go anytime then.
All right, so I'll say farewell, and thanks for listening. See you now.